attends today is a big one. For the team, I would like to acknowledge that Starbucks has always been recognized as one of the world's leading multinational coffee house chains. With more than 35,000 stores operating across approximately 80 markets. Over the past few years, Starbucks has experienced a significant consumer trust and brand reputation crisis. This has one objective. We need to understand what happened, determine why this crisis escalated, evaluate its impact on Starbucks, and decide what strategic actions we should implement moving forward. Let's begin with an overview of the current situation.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. As the CEO mentioned, Starbucks is currently facing a consumer trust and brand reputation crisis. The issue began when Starbucks became associated with discussions surrounding the Israel-Palestine conflict. Although Starbucks never officially supported any government or military operation, public discussions on social media created a different perception. Consumers across various countries began sharing posts, videos, and opinions claiming that Starbucks had taken a political position. These discussions quickly developed into organized boycott campaigns. As the campaign spread internationally, Starbucks experienced declining customer traffic, reduced sales in several markets, and increasing criticism regarding our corporate values.
Thank you. You mentioned that Starbucks never officially supported this side. Could you clarify our company official response?
Certainly. Starbucks released an official statement explaining that the company does not financially support any government or military operation. In addition, Starbucks also announced humanitarian assistance by donating food aid to families affected by the conflict. Despite these efforts, many consumers had already formed their own opinions based on information circulating online. Unfortunately, those perceptions proved stronger than our official communication.
If I may add something, sir, one challenge we faced was the speed at which information spread across digital platforms. Today, consumers receive news from Instagram, TikTok, and other social media platforms much faster than they receive official corporate announcements. By the time Starbucks published its clarification, millions of people had already seen videos, comments, and posts encouraging others to boycott the company. Once public perception begins to spread online, correcting misinformation becomes extremely difficult.
Let's make important observations. Would it be fair to say that Starbucks lost control of the public narrative?
To some extent, yes. Instead of Starbucks defining its own corporate identity, public opinion began shaping how consumers viewed our company. Many customers questioned whether Starbucks still represented their values of neutrality, exclusivity, and social responsibility. Even consumers who had been loyal customers for many years have started reconsidering whether they wanted to continue supporting our brand.
I would also like to highlight that the crisis is different from a normal operational issue. Normally, when a company experiences a product defect or service failure, corrective action can resolve the problem quickly. However, this situation involves customer trust, which is more difficult to rebuild. Trust is an intangible asset. Once consumers lose confidence in a company's integrity, restoring that confidence requires long-term commitment rather than a single public statement.
I agree. Trust is something that takes years to build, but only moments to lose. Do we have evidence that this crisis has had measurable business consequences?
Yes, sir. One of the clearest examples can be seen here in Malaysia. Reports indicated that more than 50 Starbucks outlets were closed, and the company acknowledged that declining business performance was linked to the boycott surrounding the Gaza conflict. Although Starbucks continues to operate successfully in many countries, these closures demonstrate that reputational issues can eventually lead to financial and operational consequences. Beyond Malaysia, customer traffic declined in several international markets where boycott campaigns gained significant public support.
In addition to the financial impact, we should also consider the long-term effect on stakeholder confidence. Consumers today expect multinational corporations to demonstrate ethical leadership and social responsibility. When they believe that a company action do not align with those expectations, they may choose to support alternative brands instead. This shift in consumer behavior creates additional challenges beyond short-term financial losses.
That's an excellent point. So based on today's discussion, it appears that the crisis is not simply about declining sales. Instead, it reflects changing consumers' expectations and growing influence of public opinion in today's digital environment. Before we discuss possible solution, I would like to understand why consumers reacted so strongly in the first place. What are the underlying factors that shape their behavior? Director of Global Strategy, could you explain the key concept behind the crisis?
Certainly, sir. To understand why this crisis became so significant, we need to examine two important concepts in global business: socio-cultural forces and consumer perception. This concept explains why public opinion spread so rapidly and why Starbucks faced such a strong reaction despite issuing official statements. If the board agrees, I'll begin by discussing socio-cultural forces.
Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. As mentioned earlier, there are two key concepts that have explained why this crisis became so significant. The first is socio-cultural forces, and the second is consumer perception. I'll begin with socio-cultural forces. In global business, socio-cultural forces refer to the values, beliefs, attitude, and social expectation that influence how consumers behave. These factors shape not only what customers buy, but also which companies they choose to support. Today, consumers are far more socially conscious than they were in the past. Many people expect multinational corporations to take a responsible position on social, political, and humanitarian issues. As a result, purchasing decisions are no longer based solely on product quality or price. They are also influenced by whether a company's values align with the customer's own beliefs. In Starbucks case, discussion is surrounding the Israel-Palestine conflict spread rapidly across social media platforms such as Instagram and TikTok. Although Starbucks clarified its position, many consumers perceive the company differently. This perception encouraged boycott campaigns across several countries and influenced purchasing behavior.
So, if I understand correctly, the crisis was not caused by the quality of Starbucks' product or services. Instead, it was influenced by changing social values and public expectations.
Exactly, sir. This crisis demonstrates that external socio-cultural forces can affect a multinational corporation even when its core business operation remain unchanged. Consumers will increasingly expect businesses to demonstrate ethical responsibility, transparency, and social awareness. When those expectations are not met or are perceived not to be met, consumer behavior can change very quickly.
I would also like to add to that point. From a marketing perspective, Starbucks has always positioned itself as more than just a coffee company. We promote values such as community, inclusivity, and human connection. Because of that, consumers naturally hold Starbucks to a higher standard. When customers believed that our actions were inconsistent with those values, many felt disappointed, regardless of whether those perceptions were accurate.
That raises an important question. How much influence did social media have in shaping those perceptions?
Social media play a major role. In today's digital environment, information spreads almost instantly. A single video, post, or hashtag can reach millions of people within hours. Unfortunately, negative content often spreads faster than official corporate communications. Consumers were exposed to thousands of comments, opinions, and boycott campaigns before many even saw Starbucks' official statement. This demonstrates how quickly digital platforms can influence public opinion and shape corporate reputation.
If I may add, social media has changed the nature of business risk. Years ago, reputational issues developed gradually. Today, a crisis can escalate probably within a single day. Once negative narrative become widely accepted online, they can influence purchasing behavior, investor confidence, and even employee morale. For multinational companies, reputation has become one of the most vulnerable and valuable assets.
That's a very good point. So, while social cultural forces explain why consumers reacted emotionally, we also need to understand how those reactions translated into business decisions. Director, could you explain the second concept, consumer perception?
Certainly. Consumer perception refers to the way customers interpret and evaluate the company's actions, products, and reputation. The important point is that perception is based on what consumer believed, not necessarily on factual information. During this crisis, many people formed opinions about Starbucks based on discussions circulating online. Although Starbucks officially stated that it didn't support any government or military operation and had provided humanitarian assistance, those statements were not enough to change public perception. Consumers had already formed their own conclusions. As a result, perception became more influential than reality.
That's quite concerning. Would it be fair to say that public perception became our biggest challenge?
Yes, sir. Once consumers believed Starbucks was associated with the conflict, many decided to reduce or stop purchasing from the company altogether. Some also encouraged friends and family members to support alternative coffee brands that they believed better reflected their personal values. This demonstrates how strongly consumer perception influences purchasing decisions and long-term brand loyalty.
I would also like to point out that perception doesn't only affect existing customers, it also influences potential customers. When people repeatedly encounter negative discussions about a brand online, they may choose never to visit Starbucks in the first place. Therefore, managing consumer perception is not only about retaining loyal customers, but also about attracting future ones.
I completely agree from a sustainability perspective. Trust is built through consistent action over time. Consumer today expect businesses to demonstrate ethical behavior, environmental responsibility, and community involvement. When a gap exists between stakeholder expectation and the company's perceived behavior, public trust begins to decline. That's exactly what happened during this crisis.
Thank you, everyone. Based on our discussions, it's clear that this crisis was driven by more than misinformation alone. Changing social cultural values, the rapid spread of information through digital media and consumer perceptions, all combined to influence customer behavior and damage Starbucks' reputation. Understanding these factors help us identify the root causes of the problem. The next question is, how do we rebuild trust? What strategic action should Starbucks implement to strengthen its reputation and regain consumer confidence? Chief Communication Officer, I would like you to present your recommendations.
Thank you, sir. Based on our analysis, I believe the first and most urgent priority should be strengthening stakeholders' communication and engagement. The crisis has shown that many stakeholders, including customers, employees, investors, and local community, lost confidence in Starbucks because of the information circulating online. Whether the information was accurate or not, the outcome was the same. Consumers' trust declined. Therefore, our immediate objective should be to rebuild confidence through transparent, consistent, and two-way communication.
When you say two-way communications, what exactly does it mean?
Good question. Many companies treat communication as simply issuing press releases or official statements. However, during a crisis, communication should also involve listening. Starbucks should actively engage with customers through official social media channels, community events, customer feedbacks, platforms, and employee communication sessions. Instead of only telling stakeholders what Starbucks believe, we should also understand what concerns they have and respond accordingly.
I completely agree with that. Consumers today expect companies to be accessible. If Starbucks remain silent while conversations continue online, consumers may assume that the company has something to hide. Being transparent allows us to regain credibility and reassure customers that Starbucks is committed to ethical business practices.
That sounds reasonable. However, communication alone doesn't necessarily convince people. How can we ensure stakeholders actually delivers?
That is where stakeholder theory becomes relevant. Stakeholder theory suggests that a company should not focus solely on maximizing profits for shareholders. Instead, organizations should consider the interests of all stakeholders, including customers, employees, suppliers, investors, and local communities. The long-term success of any multinational corporation depends on maintaining healthy relationship with these groups. During this crisis, many stakeholders felt uncertain about Starbucks' value. By engaging openly and consistently with them, Starbucks demonstrates accountability and begins rebuilding those relationships.
I would like to add something. Stakeholder theory also remind us that trust cannot be rebuilt through communication alone. Stakeholder evaluate companies based on whether their action match their words. Therefore, communication must also be supported by responsible business practices. Otherwise, stakeholders may perceive our efforts as nothing more than reputation management.
That's an excellent point. So, communication creates the opportunity to rebuild trust, but actions ultimately determine whether the trust is restored.
Exactly, sir. For example, Starbucks could organize regular community engagement programs, hold listening sessions with employees, publish transparent sustainability reports, and respond more actively to customers' concerns on social media. These actions demonstrate that Starbucks is genuinely committed to addressing stakeholders' expectations rather than simply protecting its company's image.
Well, I support this strategy. I like to raise one concern. Rebuilding trust is not immediate. Many consumers have already formed emotional opinions. Some may continue believing misinformation despite receiving accurate information from Starbucks. How we do overcome that challenge?
We shouldn't expect public perception to change overnight. Instead, Starbucks should focus on consistency. Every communication should reinforce the same corporate values, and every business decision should support those messages. Over time, stakeholders will judge Starbucks based on repeated actions rather than isolated statements. Trust is rebuilt gradually through consistency.
As a chief marketing officer, I would also suggest involving our employees. Employees are among Starbucks' most important ambassadors. If they clearly understand the company's values and crisis response, they can communicate more confidently with customers and strengthen trust at the store level.
That's an excellent suggestion. Employees interact with customers every day, so their understanding of the company's position is essential. Communication should therefore extend beyond customers to include our internal stakeholders as well.
I would like to add one final observation. Strong stakeholder communication also allows Starbucks to identify emerging issues before they become major crises. By regularly engaging with customers and communities across different countries, Starbucks can monitor changes in public opinion and respond proactively rather than reactively. This strengthens both reputation management and long-term strategic planning.
Excellent. It seems the board agrees that strengthening stakeholder communication and engagement should be our first strategic priority. However, communication alone will not fully restore consumer confidence. Consumers also expect companies to demonstrate social responsibility through meaningful actions. That brings us to our second recommendation. Chief Sustainability Officer, would you explain how CSR and sustainability initiatives can support Starbucks recovery?
As discussed earlier, communication is the first step in rebuilding trust. However, communication alone is not enough. Consumers today expect company to demonstrate their value through meaningful actions. Therefore, our second strategy recommendation is to expand Starbucks' corporate social responsibility (CSR) and sustainability initiative. This strategy focuses on strengthening our environmental, social, and ethical commitments while creating long-term value for all stakeholders.
Could you explain why CSR should be one of our priorities? Some people may argue that CSR has little impact during a reputational crisis.
Certainly, CSR is much more than philanthropy or charitable donation. For Starbucks, it includes ethical coffee sourcing, supporting coffee farmers, reducing environmental impact, investing in employee welfare, and contributing to local communities. This initiative demonstrates that Starbucks is committed to responsibility business practice even during challenging periods. When consumers observe consistent action that reflect the company's stated values, they are more likely to rebuild their trust in the brand.
I agree. Today's consumers, especially younger generations, pay close attention to environmental and social issues. Many customers now evaluate companies based on sustainability, ethical sourcing, and community involvement before deciding where to spend their money. Strong CSR initiatives therefore strengthen both our reputation and customer loyalty.
Exactly. This strategy is supported by the resources-based view theory or RBV. According to RBV, organizations achieve a sustainable competitive advantage through valuable and difficult to imitate resources. For Starbucks, these resources are not limited to coffee or store location. Our brand reputation, customers' loyalty, ethical sourcing practice, and sustainability commitments are valuable intangible assets that distinguish Starbucks from competitors. Strengthening these resources creates long-term competitive advantage that competitors can easily replicate.
Can you provide some examples of Starbucks existing sustainability initiatives?
Of course, Starbucks has already implemented several successful initiatives. For example, the company follow coffee and farmer equity practice which promote responsible coffee sourcing while supporting coffee growing communities. In addition, Starbucks has archived approximately 98% ethically sourced coffee, demonstrating its commitment to sustainable business practice. The company also invests in reducing environmental impact through sustainable packaging, waste reduction initiative, and responsible supply chain management. Expanding these programs reinforce Starbucks' reputation as an ethical and social responsible multinational corporation.
I support this recommendation, but I'd like to raise one concern. CSR programs require significant financial investment. If consumers perceive this initiative as publicity campaigns rather than genuine commitments, we may fail to achieve the desired outcomes. How can Starbucks avoid the risk?
That's a very important concern. The key is consistency and transparency. CSR initiatives should not be introduced only during time of crisis. Instead, they should remain part of Starbucks' long-term corporate strategy. The company should also publish measurable sustainability reports and regularly communicate its progress to stakeholders. When consumers see continuous improvement over time, they are more likely to believe that Starbucks is genuinely committed to responsible business practices.
Excellent. Now let's move to our third recommendations. Our reports also suggest adopting localization strategies. Why is localization important for Starbucks?
Localization is essential because Starbucks operates in diverse cultural environments. Although Starbucks has a strong global identity, consumer preferences differ from one country to another. A product or marketing campaign that performs well in one market may not produce the same result as well. Therefore, Starbucks should continue adapting selected product professional campaign and community initiative to reflect local cultures, traditions, and consumer preference. This enables the company to remain relevant while respecting cultural differences.
I would like to expand on that. This recommendation is supported by institutional theory. Institutional theory explains that organizations must adapt to the social norms, cultural values, and expectations on the environment in which they operate. For a multinational corporation like Starbucks, understanding local culture is essential for maintaining legitimacy and building strong relationships with local communities. For example, Starbucks could introduce beverages inspired by local flavors, celebrate important cultural festivals through seasonal promotions, and collaborate with local suppliers wherever appropriate.
Thank you, everyone. Today's discussion highlights an important conclusion. Communication with trust, CSR demonstrate our commitment through actions. However, before approving these recommendations, we must carefully evaluate the potential risk and overall business impact. Chief Risk Officer, I would like you to present your assessment.
Thank you, sir. Before implementing our proposed strategies, it is important that we evaluate the potential risk and the impact on Starbucks' long-term performance. Although recommendations are designed to rebuild trust, they also involve challenges that require careful planning. Based on our analysis, I have identified 5 major risks that Starbucks must address. The first risk is declining sales and operational closures. As discussed earlier, boycott campaigns and negative public perception have already reduced customer demand in several markets. This has affected our financial performance, and in some countries like Malaysia, contributed to the closure of more than 50 Starbucks in Malaysia.
That naturally leads to another concern. What happens if customers permanently switch to competing brands?
That is our third major risk, loss of customer loyalty and increased competition. Many consumers have already chosen to support local coffee brands because they believe those businesses better reflect their personal values. Once customers establish new purchasing habits, convincing them to return become increasingly difficult. This means Starbucks is not only competing on product quality, but also on values, trust, and emotional connection.
However, throughout today's meeting, we have repeatedly mentioned social media. How significant is its influence from a risk management perspective?
It is extremely significant. Our first risk is the rapid amplification of misinformation through social media. Platforms such as Instagram, TikTok allow opinions, boycott campaigns, and rumors to spread globally within a matter of hours. Unlike traditional media, social media enables every consumer to become both a content creator and an influencer. As a result, Starbucks has very little time to respond before public opinions begin shaping our corporate image.
Are there any other risks we should consider?
Yes, CEO, our fifth and final risk is a social-cultural values disconnect. Throughout the crisis, many consumers believe Starbucks actions were inconsistent with the values of neutrality, inclusivity, and social responsibility that the company publicly promotes. Whether those perceptions were accurate or not is not the central issue. The problem is that consumers believe there was a gap between Starbucks' values and its actions.
These initiatives are interconnected. Communication without action lacks credibility. CSR without communication may go unnoticed. Localization without trust will not achieve its full impact. After considering today's discussion, I am pleased to confirm that the Executive Board unanimously approves the proposed strategic action plan. Look forward to working together as we implement these strategies and continue strengthening Starbucks' global reputation. If there are no further matters to discuss, I hereby declare today's Executive Board's meeting officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone.